Woody's World is sponsored by Shanahan's Steakhouse. We've managed to go the first complete hour without mentioning the Rockies in any tone, and I'm going to keep my tone down today. I'm not going to shout and holler, but I watched that game last night. I don't know what gets into me about 7 or 8 o'clock at night. I actually watch the Rockies. But they're going to play tonight, we think. It may be that they don't play again for the rest of the week, and they've got this long homestand, but that may not be a bad idea. They sent down Tyler Messick, who is one of their great young prospects, and he went to Albuquerque, and they've announced today, if you haven't seen that, they're shutting him down. They're shutting him down. He needs to go off and work on some issues. Well, I could go off and work on some issues with him. Throw strikes, young man. Throw strikes, and you can be in the major league. Here was a guy that we talked to earlier in the year that really idolizes Clayton Kershaw and wanted to be the next Clayton Kershaw. But if you can't find the plate, you can't. But this is just endemic of the Colorado Rockies. And I made fun yesterday of their philosophy isn't draft and development, it's daft development. As Troy Rink pointed out here last Friday, he thinks, and I trust Troy, he covered that team for 15 years or so, that he said somewhere something happens between when they draft players and when they get to the major leagues. And I've thought about that over the last 5 days. I think it goes beyond that. I think they can't do either one well. I don't think they draft well. We go back every year and go, look at the guys that were available after they picked. And they picked a pitcher a few years ago that never became anything, and there were like 7 guys after that. I don't trust their draft, and I certainly don't trust their development. And I've talked about Jeff Brightest, and that I don't think he's really doing the job as a general manager. And someone wrote me and said, what was he doing before that? He was in charge of the minor league system. He was the senior director of personnel, and he had worked with all the minor leagues. That's why you never saw him here. You have to wonder, Dan O'Dowd put most of his emphasis on the minor leagues over the past few years, and his number one guy was Jeff Brightest. I got to wonder, when you see all these pitchers come through the system, how many of them are really working? I spent this morning looking at stats for the Rockies. They've now lost, 14 out of 16 games. They are considered on the ESPN Power Rankings poll number 30. Who would have believed that a few weeks ago? Not for the way the Rockies started out, but the Brewers were just the most miserable team in the league. Well, guess who has the fewest victories in the league? That would be the Colorado Rockies. They have 13. Everyone else has at least 14. Now, you can say the Rockies, as people will respond, have played fewer games than anybody else because of the rainouts. Well, that's actually to their advantage because they would have more losses than they have now. It doesn't mean that they'd have 15 victories. I look at this team now, and I wonder what you could possibly do. If I were Jeff Brightest, do you fire Walt Weiss? Les has brought that up on a couple occasions. I saw a report by a national media expert in baseball whose headline was 4 managers on the hot seat. And I thought, oh, well, Walt Weiss will be one of them. He wasn't even one of them. I think it's known nationally that the Rockies are not going to fire their manager. They're just not going to fire their manager. Walt Weiss is not doing a very good job, and people tend to discount that he has been given such a bad array of players. He now, and a big point was made in the offseason, has a lot more control over player personnel decisions. How in the world can Walt Weiss sit there in the dugout and continue to put a guy in the lineup on an irregular basis who strikes out again last night 3 times? A guy that has 30 strikeouts and 50 at-bats. This was after 25 strikeouts and 50 at-bats in spring training. I'm not very good in math, but that's 55 strikeouts in 100 at-bats. That means you're striking out more than half the time. I did take enough math to know that. You can't put anybody in baseball in a lineup that does that on a regular basis. You just can't do it. You've got a guy at first base And I realize the first baseman is on the concussion list. But you got a guy at first base. If you look at him, he has started 8 games at first place. He makes an error every other game. And guess what? He's making more than that because he's making mental errors. He's not getting to the balls he should be getting to. He had 2 errors on a play the other night, and he just got 1 error for it. So you got a guy in center field who strikes out all the time. You got a guy at first base who can't catch the ball. He couldn't catch it to catcher, can't play any other positions. They've got a guy with a bad foot problem, and having gone through that, only 2 things can possibly happen. One, you rest a long time, or you tear it completely, which is what happened to me, and then the pain goes away. So maybe the best way is to let him play until it tears completely. He's even said that. Or you give him cortisone shots, but you can't just have 4 outfielders, and one of them, Corey Dickerson, can't go out and play in the field. Is anybody... I mean, I go back to, and this is my point of the whole thing, Casey Stengel, when he was the manager of the New York Mets, and it became a book title, doesn't anybody here know how to play the game? And I'm not just talking about the players, I'm talking about the manager, the coaches, the general manager, the ownership, the scouting directors. Doesn't anybody here know how to play this game? They don't even know how to play any game. And I'm talking about with the media, with the fans, with other teams. They can't trade, they can't draft, they can't develop. What in the hell is this? I'm Woody Page, and that's my opinion. Shanahan's Steakhouse has been selected over and over again by everyone. Wes, I mean, you go through everything. Shanahan's is... if you had to pick 5 restaurants in town, it would be in the top 5. It's our favorite restaurant. And if you go there, go back there, if it's been a while, and Mark Steron, the managing general partner, has told us we'd like for people maybe who haven't gone for a while to come back and remember how much you enjoyed yourself. Best steaks in town. I mean, I've had a lot of steaks in town. They are the best. Best side dishes, appetizers, great desserts, incredible wine list, great service, great valet parkers, great, nice people, a good-looking crowd. If you're ugly and old and goofy like me, maybe you shouldn't go. You want to be part of a good-looking crowd. It crosses all
socioeconomic.
Thank you. Yeah. So make a reservation today at shanahansteakhouse.com. If you want a really incredible evening that's memorable, go to Shanahan's.